do whatever you have to do to put yourself in the position to do what you love. You know, if you want to be a recording engineer or a mixing engineer and run a studio full time, do whatever you need to do to put yourself in that position to pay the bills and to go out and meet people. I mean, all those things are interchangeable.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Today's episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is sponsored by Roswell Pro Audio, maker of handcrafted microphones in California. Inspired design and impeccable attention to detail will help you capture a gorgeous vintage sound without the vintage price tag. Check out their beautiful line of microphones at roswellproaudio.com. Sending your music to be mastered can be scary, but sending your music to a total stranger for mastering can be really scary. Chris Graham is a Billboard chart-breaking mastering engineer with thousands of credits and knows how to make your record sound fantastic. But more importantly, he understands that there is one person that really knows what a great record sounds like, and that's you, rock stars. So if you're thinking about hiring professional mastering, but not sure if it's right for you, go to chrisgrahammastering.com and get a free sample mastering of your song. Go find out just how great your record can sound at chrisgrahammastering.com. Just click the link included in the show notes. Hey Rockstars, it's your host Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Mr. Pete Woj, a multi-instrumentalist, singer-songwriter, audio engineer, and home studio owner. Pete studied music at Berklee College of Music, Rollins College, and University of Vermont, and has produced and written music in many genres professionally over 15 years, with a focus on rock, pop, and hip-hop and Americana. In fact, I met Pete because he was self-admittedly a Wilco fan and loved my interview with Pat Sansone on episode 68. Pete enjoys taking what he's learned both in the classroom and in the studio and teaching that knowledge with a focus on mixing, mastering, and recording in home and project studio environments through his blog and YouTube channel, mixbetternow.com. In Pete's own words, quote, "I truly find joy in helping beginners who are new to the world of audio." Quote. So Pete also runs a monthly mixing membership site called learningtomix.com, where you can join an online community of recording musicians and aspiring audio engineers. Every month, members receive a new set of multi-tracks and learn from Pete and his partner David of Home Recording Made Easy as they mix the song from start to finish. It's like an audio gym membership for your ears and mixing skills. Awesome. And I'm excited to have Pete joining us on the podcast today because he is going to lay some serious mixing wisdom on us rock stars. Pete's going to teach us 5 game-changing mix moves for the home studio. So sit back and get ready to rock your home studio mixes. Please welcome Pete Woj to the podcast. Pete, my main man, are you ready to rock, dude?
I am always ready to rock, Liz. Let's do it.
I know you are, man. So it's awesome to have you on the show. I know we've been talking about doing this for a long time, but what a cool topic you're going to share with us today, too.
Yeah, man, I just want to say thank you for having me on, of course, and it's long overdue, but I am excited, and I'm also very pumped to just talk about some mixing stuff and to share a couple things that I feel are definitely game-changing mix moves for folks in the home studio. So
awesome, dude. And I know we took a minute to get your mic set up, but man, it sounds good, dude. Your mic sounds real good. Yeah.
Well, I got to tip my hat to Aston microphones here. I am running an Aston Origin into just one of the standard pre's in my one of my Apollos, and I'm using the API Vision channel strip.
Nice, dude. That sounds unison. Real good.
Thanks, man.
It almost sounds like a warm ribbony quality, but I'm sure it's a condenser, right?
It is a condenser. What I like about this mic is it's very, very affordable. It's like $250 US. It is, as we said, a large diaphragm condenser. It is cardioid only. It's not a multi-pattern, but it does have a 10 dB pad, and it does have, let's see, it's got a little bit of a filter on it. So Yeah,
Nice.
it's great. I think they say it's like C12-esque, but it just sounds like a good condenser to me. So if anybody is got a budget and they want something good, this sounds great on like vocals, acoustic guitars, room mics, overheads, whatever you want to use it on.
Are you having to use an actual pop filter in front of it right now, or is that just like built into the mic itself?
They say it's built in, but I'm consciously trying to not eat the mic at the same time. But sometimes when I shoot videos, I do use this as my VO mic whenever I make videos or tutorials, and sometimes I'll get a plosive, but it's not very often. So it's a good little mic.
Cool, man. Well, it sounds good. Well, all right. Cool. So I gave an intro to you, but tell us in your own words how you got started out in recording. Like, how'd you get to this point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine it's similar for a lot of musicians, but in the early 2000s when Apple computers were really taking off and GarageBand was a thing, it was like, oh my God, I can get a computer and I can get an interface and start actually recording my own music. Whether obviously at that stage it was demos, but just having that be a concept, to be a thing. And I've always done a lot of solo performing, just singing, playing acoustic guitar, singer-songwriter-y kind of stuff. And just to be able to sit in my bedroom when I was in college, around, it was like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And get my first...
I think I was still recovering from partying like it was 1999 at that point.
Well, that's another story for another podcast. But no, but it just got me excited. And my whole ambition with it really was not to get into audio at all. It was just to demo some of my own music and not have to, go book studio time. And, because, the early aughts, as I believe they're called, studio time then was really expensive, kind of more than it is now anyway. Yeah. And it was just exciting for me. It was a whole new frontier. And the only thing I wanted to do was be able to record my own music. And it kind of stayed that way for a while. I had no desire to record anybody else. I had no, that's really all it was. It was just a catalyst for that. And then it kind of grew, a few years later. And, as more affordable and better sounding home studio gear started to come out, I guess, that sort of intrigued me. And then it just kind of took off from there.
So you kind of started out with GarageBand, started dabbling around in that. What do you end up using now? Like what are some of the DAWs that you've used and really, really enjoyed?
Yeah, well, it's I know you know this because we've talked about it, but I've been a Pro Tools user for a long time. Actually, let me back that up. I started on GarageBand. I felt I needed a little bit more features, once I kind of got into it. So I picked up Logic, and I believe it was like Logic 7 at the time. Mm-hmm. So I think that was around 2000. What is that? 2006 was Logic 7, something like that. Anyway, I actually learned really a lot of the fundamentals on Logic. I never got into Pro Tools because I always hated the sound of M-boxes and, like Digio 2s and stuff. I just didn't love the way that they sounded. And, I could never afford a Pro Tools HD rig, at the time. So, that wasn't an option. But when Pro Tools went to 9, I believe it was, where they were able to integrate, any other interface with Pro Tools, I kind of hopped over to Pro Tools and just learned that, used that for a while. And now I've really been working predominantly inside of Studio One from PreSonus, Studio One 3. And, it's crazy. I never thought I would do that. But I'll tell you what, Studio One has some amazing features in it that no other DAWs, or let me rephrase that, at least Pro Tools doesn't have. And this isn't like a bash Pro Tools thing by any means. It's just like, I think all DAWs are great. It's just like whatever works for the individual is what I advocate,
Yeah, I think they all have different attributes that sort of are powerful in different platforms, which is cool. Hey, by the way, do you ever remember a guy who was teaching Logic called SF Logic Ninja?
David Earl. I don't care.
Dude, I just invited him to be on the podcast. So David, this is a shout out to you. If you hear this and you get my invite again, you got to come on and join us.
You got to do it, David. I'll tell you what, I watched David Earl for a long time, man, back when, in the pioneer days of YouTube, when there wasn't a lot of tutorials on there. I remember I found his channel and I just loved his personality. He was super funny, but I mean, also, does anybody on earth know more about Logic than him? Probably not.
Yeah, he's an OB, an original blogger, right?
He totally is, man. But what a great guy. And it's funny too, because if I'm not mistaken, he, I work with peer of mine doing the in the mentorship network, and he used to work for peer of mine out in San Francisco. So yeah, he's a great dude.
I think I remember
talented.
watching one of his videos where he said, "I'm kind of signing off because I'm going to take this new job at peer of mine." And then recently he just came back on the scene. So it's kind of cool. But anyway, I digress. So I like to ask our guests to share an inspirational quote at the beginning of the show. You got anything you want to get us excited about hitting the studio?
Yeah, I mean, so and it's funny too, because like I'm a big quote guy, or at least I
like the quotes themselves have to be big.
Yeah, they have to be really large. No, I like lyrics. I'm kind of a dork like that. But you got to pull out a little bit of Yoda, so to speak, and something that I like that's great for me, and it's pertinent, and we can talk. And I'm sure we'll get into this in a little bit, but whether it's music or business or teaching or whatever, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. So I'm not sure if Yoda can drop, and of course I also love the do or do not. There is no try. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny too, because I've never been like a big Star Wars nerd. And then I kind of got into Star Wars probably 5 years ago. And then I watched everything, and I've just been like, man, what have I been missing? So
dude, I was there, man. It was 1978, a line going around the block for the very first one.
No way.
Yeah. I was 10 years old, and my dad showed me a picture. He showed me the spread in the centerfold in Time magazine. It was like this new movie, and he showed it to me, and then we went out to see it. It was pretty exciting.
Man, it's funny because it's you look at the special effects for what's the first one at the time was A New Hope, I think.
Yeah.
And
I always just thought of it as Star Wars. I didn't even know it had another name until much later.
Yeah, totally. And but it's funny because you look at the special effects now, and it looks super cheesy and fake. But from what I understand from people I know that were there, they were like, man, at the time that was absolutely revolutionary, mind-blowing stuff that they were seeing.
Totally, man, it totally was.
Oh, hey, I forgot part of that quote, by the way. I forgot the first part.
Out.
Yeah. So actually the quote is, named must your fear be before you can banish it. Fear is the path. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering.
Dude, you're it's like Yoda quotes from you plus the tone of your voice on this mic. I mean, I feel like I'm on a really great self-help video here, or a podcast. Rather. Is
it that good? I feel like, I'm pretty happy with where I have my mic dialed into from doing so many tutorial videos. I'm like I said, I got the API Vision channel strip, a little bit of EQ, a little compression from that, and then I'm running into an LA2A behind that. So I've got that buttery thing happening.
Yeah, that sounds buttery indeed. Well, so I like that. And, you can't even address your fears until you identify them. Is that kind of the idea there? Yeah,
I'm a big, believer in that, but I'm also a sufferer from fear, anxiety. My whole life I've and I'm not ashamed of it at all. It's made me who I am today, but I've always had issues with anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. And, it's big. I think a lot of people suffer from it, whether they acknowledge it and they talk about it publicly or not. I think it's a very real problem.
Well, it definitely is in and around music. And while we may be less afraid to record ourselves in the studio, we can be really afraid to let anybody else actually hear it and put it out there,
It's just one of those things where just being a songwriter and exposing yourself and being intimate. It's literally like pulling a curtain open to your soul, and it can be frightening. There's a quote I love from the band Augustana. One of my favorite records of all time is their first record, All the Stars and Boulevards. And the guy Dan, the singer, and the songwriter in the band there, I think there's a quote he has. It's like I've read it all, I've said it all, I've sung my life away, and that sort of resonates with me where, there are people that really do that, and to put yourself on stage or to put your music onto a permanent medium. And, I know that's zeros and ones these days, but whether it's a CD or a record or an MP3, it's like, it's a heavy thing. And especially if you're doing stuff like what I'm doing now with teaching and stuff, it's like, there's just putting yourself out on YouTube it can be a scary thing because it can be an awful place. It can be a wonderful thing, but it can be an awful place at the same time.
Yeah, true. I mean, people just comment right on the video. You can kind of get bashed if you don't do something right sometimes.
Yep.
Well, so I imagine you've been through some of that. Can you share a story about an important failure for you? Something where it was, kind of was a real learning experience?
Yeah. Well, it's actually kind of. I would say it's pre. You hear the plosive there? I said pre.
Didn't bother me, man. Not on my end.
I don't know. I heard it. I was like, man, pop filter. No. So you have to have a thick skin if you're gonna be a blogger and if you're gonna be on YouTube. You have to not take people seriously. I mean, you do, but at the same time, it's like you just have to just let it roll off. But I had been wanting to get into audio blogging for a long time. I had found emails going back and forth between myself and Joe Gilder. I know who's been on the show from Home Studio Corner.
Yeah.
From 2010, 2011. Him and I we were actually talking about doing a blog together and stuff, back in the day. And I just kept delaying it, just never doing it. And then you see all these things popping up. And, part of my reasoning for starting and sharing what I've been doing is I've seen a lot of misinformation out there, and I wanted to sort of put some, arm some people with good information and stuff like that. But so, to prep it where you're going to make a blog and you're going to, get a brand name or whatever that even means, and just kind of build a whole thing. I mean, that takes quite a bit of work. So I would say before I launched Mix Better Now it was April. It was like the last week of April, 2016. And what happened was that end of that February, once I was getting ready to launch, and I could have launched it sooner, but I went into like a pretty massive depressive, down spiral, if you will, where I was pretty paralyzed. And I think some of that has to do with fear, but I'm also a firm believer in the subconscious really dictating a lot of things to people. And I had an awful time. It was probably like one of the worst times of my life.
And so this was like right after you launched, right?
It was right before I launched.
Oh, right before you launched. Okay.
Yeah. Like the only way that I could explain it was it's kind of like, it's like going skydiving or something, and like you're up in the plane and like you're getting ready to jump, and like you're kind of standing there and you're getting ready to go. And then it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It was just like, I feel like all my insecurities and all my doubts just completely just came crashing in. And, and there was some other stuff. Like I have some health issues, specifically with my ears and my hearing, which is kind of ironic considering this is what I do. But I have a lot of hearing loss, and I have constant 24/7 tinnitus. And,
just from rocking out with your guitars too loud?
I don't really know, man. It's, I've been to tons of audiologists and ENTs and, in the city, and obviously, well, here in New Jersey, when we say the city, it means New York City. But I've been to Philadelphia, like everywhere, and I've had it for a long time, like since I've been like 13 or something like that, which is just kind of, so they think it's partially neurological, and they think it's also, partially from, like you said, pretty much rocking out when I was young, not protecting my hearing and all that stuff.
Although I think we kind of all did that, I know I did.
Totally, man.
But I think it's really encouraging. So in other words, we've all done that. And we all kind of experience as we get older, we experience varieties of hearing loss or some tinnitus or whatever, and we can be careful to try and protect it or, whatever. But it's really encouraging to hear that despite that, you're still able to make records, you're still able to sort out how to do it. I get emails from some of the rock stars occasionally that talk about, the struggle with, well, what do you do if you can't hear that high end? How do you get it right? Stuff like that. So I think it's cool to hear you talk about that. Well,
and I could tell you how I deal with not being able to hear certain frequencies or whatever. But part of the problem is, when you're, if you're just kind of just having fun and making demos, and it's not a super serious thing, like where you're not doing client work and all that stuff. Like, it's not a huge issue, but essentially what happened was it got so debilitating for me where it's one of those diseases or one of those conditions where the more you think about it and the more you focus on it, the more prevalent it is. So, it was just kind of like a perfect storm that hit me before I launched, and they've connected stress and things like that to actually being able to aggravate and to intensify the tinnitus and things like that. So basically I was in bed for like 2 months.
Wow.
I like dropped off the face of the earth, was just feeling absolutely paralyzed and terrible. And it was completely frightening. And I really didn't think I was going to like swing out of it. I mean, and I've had like, depressive, weird bouts in my life before where, maybe there was something I could identify that was specifically causing that or triggering it. Like when I graduated college, I kind of went into this funk and like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And, it was just a really weird, like existential kind of crisis point. But so I think, fear is real. And, some people are just able to shirk that off and whatever. But I really had to fight to kind of like get my life back. And like, I'm not trying to be dramatic and I'm not trying to make it sound like anything, but it was a terrible, terrible time. And really what it boiled down to was it was like, Shawshank Redemption, man, get busy living or get busy dying. And,
wow. Nice.
Like that's it. I mean, that sums up life, right? Sink or swim, live or die. That's it. Right. You got
do it or don't do it,
Yeah. You got two choices, man. So
how'd you get through that, man? How'd you get out of that funk? Because obviously you launched, right? Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I have absolutely amazing parents. And I know you guys are giving me a hard time because I gave my pops a shout out when we were doing that live stream down in your studio. But look, I'm very blessed to have awesome parents, and they're like my best friends, and I can't be thankful for that enough. So between their help and some of my friends up here who helped me out, and went to see some doctors and stuff like that. So, sometimes what happens is the chemical balance, the chemical imbalance can get so intense that it's like, it's beyond your control. Like some people just say, oh, snap out of it, suck it up. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can't really do that. So, if anybody is listening and they've experienced that, it's like, you are not alone. Like that is a common thing. And life is hard. And, some people say, oh, what do you have to be depressed about? Blah, blah, blah. And, for everybody, it's relative. It's really only what you know. Yeah. Well, did you kind of have like an aha moment coming out of that whole thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was just one of those things where you have to basically force through and do the things that you want to do in life because you know how it is, man. Like the older you get, the faster time goes. And I just never wanted to be sitting around when I was older and being like, man, I should have done that. Or I could have helped people. I feel like we all have an obligation if we're passionate about something and if we have any inkling of talent, to share that or pass it along in some capacity, right? Like, you don't have to start blogging about it, but
you might want to put your record out.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's many ways to express yourself and to help people and to do all that stuff. So, yeah, it was something that I've always wanted to do, like I said, and procrastination and fear is a very strong and powerful thing. Whether you are, making your first demo or people or, I've had people where I used to do this thing called, it's actually winding down right now, but I used to do this thing called Mixed Critique Mondays where I would get tons and tons and tons of emails with people asking for like mixed critiques and stuff. And it's just impossible to kind of, do them all and especially for free and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it every Monday and I'm going to get a bunch of mixes and I'm going to go through them and I'm going to critique them. And, a lot of people are just terrified to even send me a mix.
Yeah.
Because it's a scary thing, especially if, you're new to it or you're not confident in your skills. And,
yeah.
It's a real thing. So, I will never judge anybody based on any of that stuff. And I would like to encourage everyone to just, be passionate. If you're passionate about something, just do it, regardless of how scary it is, regardless of how awkward it feels, because you will feel good and you will overcome those obstacles, but you have to push.
You have to start doing. Well, so there was a great quote from one of our Rockstars of Mixing events here at the studio. when we were all listening to our mixes, he said hearing his mix played in front of the whole group of people was like having to watch somebody else make out with his wife. I was like, that's so perfectly sums up just the absolute like gut-wrenching feeling sometimes of just putting your music or your mix up for everybody to see. And I applaud you kind of figuring out how to launch and just get through that. And I encourage all of you rock stars to just take that step, just take whatever you're working on and feel passionate about and just take the risk of putting it out there. Maybe don't do a huge leap, maybe just do some little leaps at first, and it will add up and accumulate.
There's another quote that I love that I'm just going to share because I'm a dork. And, oh man, let me try and think of it. Okay, here we go. This is it. Many a false step was made by standing still.
Right.
And I mean, that's it. Like for me, doing nothing is scarier than doing something, failing.
Yeah.
All that stuff. And it's like another little tidbit, a great book to read. I'm real big into Audible. I love throwing on an audiobook, like if I'm like vacuuming or, like in the car or something like that. And there's a guy named John Acuff who's a great author, and he's got a book called Start. I think it's the second book he's done, but the first one I think was called Quitter. The second book is called Start, and I highly urge everyone to read that book.
Okay, cool. We'll put links to that in the show notes too.
Great.
So give us a brief overview of what you've been up to since you launched up to now, and before you start. Then we're going to have you share with us the 5 game-changing mix moves for the home studio.
Yeah. Well, man, so I guess I've been doing this now for about a year and a half, something like that, right? 18 months. And I basically took a year and just went hard and just put a ton of free content up. So everything that's on the blog is on my YouTube channel and vice versa. And it's funny because like more people know about the YouTube channel than they do the blog. They're like, oh man, you got a website? I'm like, yep. So, it's, I just started pumping out free content and really started enjoying making videos. Once in a blue moon, I'll do a plugin review or some piece of gear that I really dig.
You also do some great giveaways too, right?
Thanks, man. Yeah, I do. I actually just had a giveaway end at midnight last night, which, nice. I gave away 3 copies of Auto Align from Sound Radix, which is incredible.
Cool.
The guys at Sound Radix are great, and they've been real good to me. So yeah, Auto Align's that's a huge game-changing plugin that nothing else does. But anyway, so I've been doing that, kind of growing into the field because, let's be honest, right? There's a lot of people out there doing audio YouTube channels or blogs or mixing this and that. And I actually had a guy the other day leave a comment. Well, I got one more video to go, but I'm doing a mixing drums from scratch series right now on YouTube. And he left a comment along the lines of like, man, there's like those mixing channels now are like a dime a dozen. And then he paid me some really nice compliment about how he's been enjoying the content and stuff like that. So, it's a little bit of a battle to sort of stay ahead of the curve and to make good stuff and to, just be sincere. But I think people can recognize that, as long as you're coming from a genuine place and you're teaching and sharing from your heart, it's there. But anyway, so yeah, I've just been doing a lot of the free stuff. I recently launched a monthly mixing membership site with my friend and colleague David Vignola from Home Recording Made Easy. But it is called Learning to Mix, learningtomix.com.
Nice.
And we're real excited about it. It's a monthly, kind of mixing community. And the premise is every month you get a new set of multi-tracks. David and I kind of teach and do our videos in real time. So the thing that we noticed was like a lot of tutorials that are done are like, they'll do it and then they'll just show you what they did. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, hey, on this vocal, I cut 250 and I boosted, blah, blah, blah. And then I compressed, this and that. So while that is important, we also wanted to show the why and the how behind it. So like not just this is what I did, but this is how I did it and this is why I did it. The reason that I'm doing serial compression with an 1176 followed by an LA2A is very specific because I want to shave off the initial transients with my 1176, and I want to smooth out the waveform with the LA2A. Like, all these decisions behind it are important, and I think people need to learn those things because it's way more important to get the fundamentals correct and to understand these things than it is to just learn some hack or some move. And I mean, those are cool too, but it's like those fundamentals are important. So anyway, so we're kind of teaching from that point of view. And what's cool is we are trying to mix as many of our students' sessions as we can.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah. So look, anybody can go get a set of multi-tracks that sounds good or, whatever. And for us, that's not really the important thing. The important thing is we want to help our students and our members, to be able to get their sessions mixed, to have a place where they could put that out, and then to hear David and I mix them, and then to also hear everyone else in the community mix them as well. We think it's an important thing because, let's be honest, most people out there looking for tutorial help or looking how to learn how to mix or learn how to record are beginners or intermediates, right?
Right.
So, listen, realistic things are not, unbelievably recorded and, multi-track sessions and all that stuff. We want to keep it very, very realistic and kind of teach from that premise. So we're trying to give as much value as we can with that. And we've been having a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think people who are recording in home studios typically have tracks that sound like they're recorded in home studios. They might not have even fancy mics or fancy mic pre's, but learning how to manage those when you're mixing. I get mixes all the time that come with sort of a home studio sound, and it's my job to transform that into something that sounds much more like a full spectrum, full frequency record.
Well, it's funny because it's kind of like, if you listen to some of these sessions that, these quote unquote A-list mixers will get, I've been lucky enough to see guys like I've seen CLA and Andrew Sheps and, Ed Cherney and all these guys mix, Andy Wallace, and they're amazing. Take nothing away from any of them. But when you hear the sessions they get, I mean, they're incredible sessions, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they sound fantastic. And it's just not realistic for beginners. It's not realistic for people with home studios. It's not realistic for the intermediate, because whether you're doing your own recording at home and making music there, or, if you are doing client work, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be getting stuff with a home studio feel or a project studio feel. And it's important that you know how to identify that, how to handle it, how to treat it, how to work with it, how to mix it. So, we want to focus on that, like real world application, like blue collar mixing,
Mm-hmm. Blue collar mixing. I like it. Well,
yeah.
I've always found that part of recording in the studio, and particularly part of mixing, is a process of sort of fixing the things that aren't right. And you just got to it's sort of like this idea, what was it, like Da Vinci or somebody like that who talked about sculpting, and they said, you start with a giant block of stone and you just remove everything that's not the sculpture, and what you're left with is the sculpture. I feel like mixing is sometimes that way. You're trying to fix the stuff that doesn't sound right until what you're left with is something that sounds great. So it's cool that you're sort of approaching it with that mentality. It's like there's just more stuff to fix maybe in a home studio recording because the tracks don't already sound amazing when you start. So you really got to figure out how to fix stuff, So that's all very exciting. And I you've taken some of the stuff that you've learned and condensed it into a pretty cool 5-piece tutorial for us today. Do you want to jump to that and sort of introduce what you got for us?
Yeah, absolutely. You want me to just kick it off here on my list, or?
Yeah. So Rockstars, once again, Pete has got 5 game-changing mix moves for the home studio that he's going to share with us today. And I'll just let you jump in and tell us what each one is, and I'll kind of jump in and chat with you about them as we go.
Yeah. So these are the things that I'm going to share are just some things that I will do in absolutely every mix session that I do. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, it doesn't matter what it's for or who it's for. These are just things that I am always trying to implement. So the first thing is that I am a massive fan and doer, if you will, of top-down mixing.
Nice. So what does this mean? Does this mean you take your shirt off when you're mixing and you're just
Yep. Absolutely. You get naked.
You're in the convertible just going down the highway.
Yep. You gotta have your shirt off and be in a convertible on the highway. Top-down mixing is a concept of starting with the broadest point of entry, if you will. So top-down mixing, you would start with your mix bus.
Okay, cool.
And basically work entirely backwards. So what a lot of folks do, or what I've seen a lot of people do, and listen, there's no right or wrong. This is just what I do. The point of which I teach all my stuff from is that there's no right or wrong. There's just, the way that works for you. If it sounds good, it is good. That's the only rule that I know. Yeah. But there are ways to get things to sound good. And I see a lot of people that'll start a mix and, they'll push up the kick in mic or the kick out mic, or they'll blend the two and then push those up and start from there and start mixing there. Well, for me, that's just impossible, because how on earth do I know how my kick drums have to sound if I can't listen to it in context with everything else? And, it's how do I know? Do I need more attack? Do I need more, more thump? Do more girth on the, how do I know? So what I do is I start on the mix bus, and I do work from templates and stuff like that, depending on what it is, but I will just about always go from the mix bus. I'll do a static mix, and static mixes are massively important. Do not overlook the power of the static mix.
Why don't you explain what a static mix means?
Okay, so a static mix is essentially just getting all your tracks, inlined. I put a static mix as part of my mix prep, where I will get everything lined up and I'll get all my routing done. I'll set up my buses, or, if I'm using a template, I guess they're already set up. And what a static mix is where you pull up the faders and you get an overall balance, and you try and make that session sound as good as you possibly can, just from balancing the faders and, maybe making some panning decisions.
Right. You're not even like EQing and compressing any individual tracks yet. You might not even have effects going, right?
Right. Nothing. I mean, raw files, no plugins on, just purely pushing the faders up. And the way that I approach that is like, okay, I can't use any plugins, and I've got to make this music sound as good as I can. So basically it's balancing all the tracks together. So once I do that, then I head over to my mix bus, and, I have a couple things that are constants for me, such as EQing, compression, and maybe a little bit of sweetening. So the way that I'll typically do that is I'm a big fan of like the Slate VCC, which is the Virtual Console Collection. So I'll usually start it off with that. Then I'll compress a little bit, maybe a little bit of the SSLG bus or the API 2500, something like that. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's not the plugins, it's the concepts.
Right.
And a little bit of compression. And then usually after that, I will do a little bit of EQing. I'm very into filtering, specifically in mid-side. I guess for those of you who aren't familiar with mid-side, that is when you can essentially have an EQ. It has to be an EQ that can do things in mid-side. But you can independently EQ everything that's in mono and then everything that's in stereo. So it sort of separates the middle from the side information.
Yeah, so you might cut a little bit more of the low end on the sides, but leave more low end in the middle.
Yeah. Very, very common thing that I'll do is like I'll high pass. Well, this is a later one of my.
Don't give it away.
All right, one of my things, but I will put a high pass filter up the middle with like a 12 dB per octave slope, and I will typically do that to like 35 hertz, maybe even 40 hertz, maybe even higher. Why? Because nobody needs any 20. Like, it's just, you don't. And that actually tightens it up. You would think like, oh, getting rid of that is going to, well, anyway, we'll get into that later. But on the sides, like you said, what I can do is I can take it up to like 100, 150 with a 12 dB per octave slope. And what that does for us is it gives us even more headroom doing that. So that's important for me. A lot of the times I will go and cut something, some low mid buildup around 500 hertz. 400 hertz, it varies obviously from session to session, but you get a lot of that low mid buildup throughout, all the tracks coming over, and then I might put some sweetening things on there, like a tape plug-in or something, but the concept there is we're at the broadest point, which is the mix bus, where everything is coming to. We're compressing a little bit and we're EQing a little bit. Instead of working with that first track and pushing the fader up, we're taking all of the audio and we're processing it starting from the mix bus.
That's cool. And not only does that make it simpler to get sounds faster in your mix because you're sort of doing a quick balance and then you're already affecting the thing as a whole, the mix as a whole. But it also, doesn't use any processing power if you're just using a handful of plugins on your stereo bus. So it's a good place to start and get much of the job done. And then I appreciate what you say about like, there's no rules about which plugins to use. It's more like whatever stuff you like, this is a great place to start finding out if it's going to do some magic for your mix.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I always, whatever you have, use it. Do not ever let your tools be an excuse, for doing something.
Yeah.
It's they always say a poor craftsman blames his tools, and
if a poor craftsman might not have any tools, actually, they enough.
they might have went and pawned those tools. And it's like, but it's true. I guarantee you could put, you could say, you can go to, to Andy Wallace and you could say, man, you got to use all the stock Pro Tools plugins in this mix and mix in the box. You can't use your console. And I bet you he would still sound like Andy Wallace. So, it has nothing to do with that stuff. Whatever you have, use it, and if you don't have a mid-side EQ, then don't worry about it. I mean, just high pass whatever you can on there and do a little subtractive moves and you're good. And then, so from there, Lidge, I go backwards, and something that I'm going to talk about later.
That was number one, right? Mix move number one.
Yeah.
We'll move it on to mix move number two.
Well, but just real quick, just to sum that up. So then I move backwards. So instead of going to another individual track, then I'll go to something like a bus. So instead of pulling up a kick drum, I'll go to my drum bus, and then I'll start there, and then I'll do a little compression and EQ on my drum bus. I'll get that balance and I'll get that blend. And then I keep working backwards a lot of the times. And the concept is that, sometimes you don't have to do anything to an individual track. There's nothing done, unnecessarily. And I'll tell you what, it's an amazingly fast and efficient way to work. Sometimes, listen, there's different situations in every session, but I would say for 7, 8 out of 10 sessions, top-down mixing is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do.
Cool, man. Well, I like that tip. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Sure thing.
Well, so are we ready to move on to number two?
We are ready to move on. I'm ready if you're ready.
Nice. I'm ready. Rockstars. Let's do it. Number two.
So we're going to piggyback this off of the top-down mixing. And my second tip is to high pass everything. Put a high pass filter, also known as a low cut filter, on everything.
Dude, I love that, because remember when we were talking about this last night, I was like, well, don't tell them high pass everything because they're going to take that literally. And you had a great response.
And I was like, no. I high pass everything. I high pass kick drums, bass guitars, and my mix bus. A common thing, and I'm sure you can attest to this, Lidge, is, a lot of people teach, high pass everything except your low end, your low end instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Don't high pass your bass or your kick, or whatever. And I mean, look, you don't have to, but this is what I do. And for me, the secret of high passing everything is that I'm not talking about drastic high passing, like you're not going to high pass your bass like you are your lead vocal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, sometimes I might do something as simple as, leaving it at 20 hertz, with a 12 dB per octave slope or an 18 dB per octave slope. And what that does on the low end stuff is it actually tightens it up. It'll make it sound less kind of flubby and less subby, less woofy, and it'll still allow the bottom end to sound big, but it'll tighten it up. And that's just something that I feel everybody should do. Like I said, on the mix bus, I high pass to around 30, 35, 40 hertz on every mix.
Well, so one of the reasons why it's interesting and useful to talk about high passing at 20, because we think, well, the range of human hearing is from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So, it's not an audible frequency below 20. Truthfully, even at 20, we mostly would just feel it. Like that's we're getting into Jurassic Park, here comes the dinosaur, T-Rex kind of frequencies when the puddle, is shaking. But what happens in digital is it's going to pass like almost right down to DC. So that means that even below 20 hertz, 10 hertz, 5 hertz, whatever, it's going to just, if that information is there, it's just going to send it right on through. And you can't hear it, and there's no way that your system is going to reproduce that or that it's very useful, but it will make the rest of your system work hard. So just the fact that it might be in there, sneaking in a teeny tiny bit can actually make your mix sound less tight because it's having to like try and do something with that information when it shouldn't even be there.
It'll also kill your headroom down the line too, is that if you have a lot of that sub-low buildup, it will, the energy of that will you'll get a couple dB boost out of that. So by high passing, you're taking back some of that headroom. I know some people battle with gain staging or, being able to leave enough headroom in their mix, for their mastering engineer or for, or just for mastering in general.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's incredible how much, or how effective that can be, in the mix.
Now, let me flip it on its head. Do you sometimes use low pass filters as well?
Oh, absolutely. One place is specifically that off the top of my head is on electric guitars. Amp sims are common these days. And listen, I hate amp sims. I know I'm not. Yes, I'm a guitar, fanatic player lover. But here's the deal: amp sims, they've yet to get the high end right, and they've yet to get sort of the upper mids right. So there's a lot of fizz that exists, above 10K, above 8K. So what happens is, unless you roll off that top, you're going to get a lot of just like that sub-low buildup that's almost inaudible. You're going to get a lot of that on an electric guitar. I shot a video. There's a tutorial on my YouTube channel and on my blog. It's called the Guitar Amp Sim Remedy. And if you guys listening are interested in that, go watch that. But the premise is that I always roll off like, I'll take a 12 dB per octave low pass, and I'll roll it down to like 8K or 7K. And using the FabFilter Pro Q2, which I do, you can solo that band and you can listen to it. And I mean, you're not hearing anything until you get to around 8K, and then you just start to hear fizz.
Right.
It just literally sounds like zzz, and like, do you need that in your mix? Nope.
And if you solo it and you're like, "Ooh, that sounds terrible," then that might be a good indicator that it's worth filtering out.
Absolutely. I mean, and even on electric guitars that you mic up your amp or your cab, there is just a lot of stuff that just doesn't live up there. Bass tracks, right? I mean, the majority of the frequency spectrum on a bass track is very small. If you look at it, if your EQ has a spectrum analyzer on it, I mean, you're going to see it. There's just not a whole lot going on above 1K, right? I mean, it's not there. So my philosophy is, if it's not there and you can't hear it, high pass it or low pass it and get rid of it, because your mix will thank you for it, right? Because like mixing is like many, many, many little moves that comprise to, one bigger thing.
Right. And when you say, I think it's a little confusing potentially, because you say, well, if you can't hear it, then why pass it out? Because it's not there and you can't hear it. But I think that the truth is, when all these things add up, you do begin to hear it. It's like a subtle effect that if it was gone and you heard the difference, you'd be like, oh, that sounds so much better, even though it might not be really obvious. Plus, with all the compression and mastering and everything, it really brings things forward that can sometimes sort of fool you into thinking they're hidden when you're in the mixing process.
Right, 100%. That's exactly right.
All right, dude. So take us on to game-changing mix move number 3.
Okay, so this is sort of kind of hearkening back to the top-down philosophy. This will make sense here, but is the use of what I call all buses. The concept of all buses is to essentially sum all of your tracks down to as little amount of faders as possible. If you want to call them VCAs, you can call them VCAs, but I don't physically use a VCA track in my DAW. I use buses. So if this is confusing, the concept is this: drums and percussion, I will typically send to like an all drums bus. Mm-hmm. Now, let me preface this though. I don't want to get hammered or anything like that. So I sort of kindly borrowed this. I've seen Dave Pensato, use a variant or a version of this, and I've sort of tweaked it and tailored it to work for me. But the concept is still the same. So my typical all buses are like all drums, all percussion, all bass, all music, all vocals, and all effects. So I want to send, obviously, all the drums in the session, are gonna get filtered down to one fader, which is gonna be all drums. All the percussion, whether it's tambourines, shakers, claps, stomps, all that stuff, are gonna go to all percussion. All bass, it's kind of more like a low end thing. Sometimes I'll send floor toms to the low end or to the all bass, but it's just all your real low end information goes to the all bass. All music is everything else. So like guitars, keys, synths, that kind of stuff goes to all music. All your vocals, you guessed it, go to all vocals. And then all your effects sends, you send to the all effects. So those are basically right before the mix bus. And that kind of just ties into, like let's say you have a 150 track session, which can be, a drag.
A nightmare?
Yeah, which can be a total nightmare and a total drag. One of my favorite CLA quotes is, if it's not manageable, it's not mixable, right? So he even has, I know he has his assistant. They sum everything down in the DAW in Pro Tools to like 44 stereo tracks, regardless of how ginormous the sessions are that he gets. Why? Because, nobody likes mixing 40, background vocals or anything like that, So the concept is you sum everything down to like 5 to 8 faders. And you use buses, even though they act as VCAs, you use buses. And the concept is this. So I can essentially control my entire mix from 5 to 8 faders, right? If I want more drums, one fader. If I want more music, more vocals, more effects, less effects, more low end, I can get all of that from one fader. Now that's super handy when it comes like automation time. Maybe if I have all the drums going to the all drums bus, well, maybe, maybe there's a ringing frequency around 600 I need to pull out. Well, I could pull it out on the all drums bus because it's a bus and not an actual VCA where you can't put any inserts on there.
Right. So Rockstars, a bus means that all the audio is actually routing through this extra channel, and a VCA means voltage controlled amplifier, which means it would just be a control fader that doesn't have any audio going through it, but the control fader might control all the original drum faders, for example.
Yes. 100%. And, look, again, it comes down to simplification and with top-down mixing in mind, because the place that I go to after I get everything routed properly, like I said, I start on the mix bus and then I'll go backwards to, maybe to the all buses. And now granted, then I'll go back to the actual buses like the drum bus, or, maybe there's an acoustic guitar bus or an electric guitar bus, or a piano keys bus or something like that. Mm-hmm. So what the all buses allows me to do is to really get a hold of my session to make it as simple as possible, and it gives me a whole lot of control. Like I said, for automation time, like something I might do. Here's a common move that I might do. When a chorus hits, I might automate the all music. I might put like a stereo widener on it, and I might throw it out like 20%, because and I might push the dB up a little bit on a couple of the things, but specifically like not the drums, because I kind of want the kick and the snare coming up the middle. So I'll widen out some of that music, so it just sort of gives it a much more grandiose kind of feel.
Cool.
And it's just for me, they're indispensable tools, because like even if I wind up not needing to compress or EQ an entire group of tracks, well, that's okay. And another great tip for doing this is that if you get into trouble with gain staging, like if you try and keep a control over your volume and things get a little too hot and a little too loud, well, if you've got 5 faders, if you've got all drums, if you have all bass, all music, all vocals, and all effects, what you can do is pull those down 5 dB before they hit your mix bus, and then retweak, the threshold on your compressor and stuff like that. And, you can sort of get out of some sticky situations with them.
Well, so there's one other thing that can be useful too. I don't know if you find yourself needing to print stems, but in the pro world, that can be a requirement for music licensing and stuff. And if you have buses for drums, different bus for bass, different bus for guitars, vocals, it makes it easier when you do a bounce of your mix to actually bounce out all those individual stems simultaneously and print them all at once, so that you can kind of reconstruct your mix later from those stems.
That's a great point. It's very easy to do with the all buses. All I would do if I needed to do that is, because they are buses, you can put a send in the bus. So I would just set up 5 stereo audio tracks, And, so the send on the drums would go to the drum stem and, the so on and so forth. It's a pretty easy thing to do. And especially like for me, I also use, I do tend to sum out of the box. So I do use a little bit of analog summing every now and then. So it just gives me options, and it makes it easy for me to, implement into my workflow.
Well, that's cool, man. What an awesome tip. I love that one. And a great reminder of some of the simple stuff that's available in all our DAWs that I think sometimes we either didn't know about or we just forget that we should be thinking about that.
Yep.
So let's move on to exciting
Quattro.
Mix move number 4.
All right. So this is one of my favorites, and I get a lot of questions about this a lot, and I usually explain it a lot, but this is a big one, and it's why I use 2 mix buses. Dun, 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 dun. What? Crazy 2? 2 is better than 1. So, okay, here's the concept of 2 mix buses. I forget why I even started doing this. This had to do with something in Pro Tools back in the day where the metering was different. So I essentially wound up setting up a bus before a master fader. So for those of you who use Pro Tools, you know that in the session you have to physically create a master fader. So it wound up being like a pre-gain stage to the mix bus, but then I wound up tweaking it out to where I had what I call a dry wet mix bus rig. So I'll try and explain this as simply as I can. It's easier if like you're looking at a screen and I'm showing it to you, of course, but just try and envision this. So in Studio One, when you open a session, it has a master fader or a stereo bus, 2 bus already set up and ready to go. In Pro Tools, like I said, you have to, physically put one in. Now, either way, that's fine. In Logic, I think they have one automatically is there when you open your DAW. I'm not familiar with too many other DAWs, but the concept is this. So the pre-existing mix bus, I call that monitors. I used to call that my mix bus, and my processed mix bus, my sub mix, and that just confused people to death. So I changed it. My mix bus, which is my wet processed bus, is my mix bus, and the other one I call monitors. So the concept is this. I will send every track in the session, just about every track in the session, to a mix bus. But that mix bus is actually a bus/aux send. Now that is where I will do all my processing, my compression, my EQ, my sweetening, any limiting, things like that. And then that goes to the master fader, which I call monitors. So on that master fader, I don't put anything on there that will change or augment the audio. Okay. So the only thing I'll put on the monitors bus is like maybe I like using Isotope Insight as a meter. So the idea is to have a clean, unchanged path out and one where I can put stuff through that mix bus processing. Now, here's the reason that you would want to use a dry wet rig like that. For example, I love using drum samples. Big fan of them. I feel like it's such a commonplace thing nowadays that you almost have to do it to stay competitive, blah, blah, blah. And that's cool, right? I actually I'm super pumped. I recently started doing some work in conjunction with Slate Digital and Steven Slate Drums. I just shot a Trigger samples video for Steven and all the guys over there. So that'll be coming out soon. Dude.
I'm gonna go watch that one. I was just mixing with Trigger recently, and I was thinking I really need to dig deeper into this.
Yeah. Well, no, I just kind of crazy. Just very very flattering. Steven just emailed me one day and was like, "Hey man, would you want to make any content for us?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So anyway, that's going to be coming out soon. I think he's gonna email that out to the Slate email list and put that up on all their channels and stuff like that. But anyway, it's going to be cool. It's kind of like a using drum samples and Trigger kind of like masterclass thing. But
very cool.
But so let's just assume that you're using Trigger and you've got some drum samples, in conjunction with your acoustic drums. So what a lot of people don't realize is that these samples, which sound awesome, or they sound specific, they're already EQ'd and compressed quite a bit. There's something going on with them, whether it's going through the desk or going through the outboard gear when they make them, or or creating these awesome sample packs. There's stuff happening.
Yeah.
And the reason that I select a specific drum sample is because I like the way that drum sample sounds. I don't want to change the way that sounds. So what I do with those samples is that I'll then route them to the monitors bus, which is clean. There's nothing on there. So it's basically has a way to get out uncolored.
Right.
And I'll send everything else, that I need to EQ and compress and do this and that to. I'll send that, to my kicks bus or my snares bus or out to the drum bus, because all of that stuff is getting EQ'd and compressed multiple times. So, there's quite a few instances where I do not want to alter the sound of certain things in my session. So I like to give myself an option to go out unprocessed, completely clean.
So are you a fan of Game of Thrones? Do you ever watch that show?
I am a fanatic, pretty much. Yeah.
So it's like this is the unsullied bus, right? Except it's got more balls.
Yeah, there's not too many balls on my monitor bus. Yeah, it's pretty weak. I don't know though, man. I wouldn't want to mess with Grey Worm. He's pretty gnarly.
All right, so
the idea, just basically in a nutshell, is the pre-designated master fader. I leave that alone, and I don't put anything on there that's going to augment the audio. And then instead, I set up a bus or an aux, and I send everything there that I want to send through my mix bus chain. Yeah,
it's fantastic. I love that idea. In fact, that's what I've been doing. I think I arrived at it for slightly different reasons, but I do what I call my mix bus, which is an aux, and I'll put all the processing on that. And then I've got the master output, and I've only been putting metering and stuff like that on there.
Exactly.
Or a reference plugin. I'll put a reference plugin if I want to flip between it. So that's a cool way to do that. And I like that trick, man. Nicely done.
Yep. Yeah, cool, man.
Well, so then we're moving on to numero cinco.
Cinco, baby. Cinco.
Un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq.
I know how to count to 10 in Greek because I am half Greek. I know I don't look it, but ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα, πέντε. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα, πέντε. Pendy is
nice. I like it.
Is 5. There you go.
Give us Pendy.
Pendy. Pendy is using reference tracks. Oh my God, this is so important. Like, seriously, this is so important. And if there is ever a way to get better faster, it's to use reference tracks, to A/B your mix, to how do I delicately put this? I like to pick reference tracks that I feel sound great, that are stylistically similar to the session I'm working on, but also songs that have been generally well received by the public, and songs that sound really good on a variety of, listening mediums, in your car, on your hi-fi in your family room, on your earbuds on your phone, and, on your monitors in your stereo, through your, whatever it may be. And look, I mean, that's a personal choice, what you want to use. But like, for example, you were talking about Wilco before in Americana, and I absolutely love Wilco to death. And quite a few of their things are, I have a reference playlist that I will typically kind of keep. And depending on the genre that I'm working in, I'll drag some stuff in to the session. Now, there's two ways that we can do this that are easy, I suppose, to work with this. You were mentioning a referencing plugin on your master fader monitor bus there. So there's Sample Magic AB, which maybe you know of or don't.
I know of that one. That's not the one I'm using. I'm actually using a new one from masteringthemix.com called Reference.
Okay,
really cool plugin that allows you to load in your reference tracks, just like you're talking about. It automatically will align, if you have like an alternate mix that you're trying to reference against, it'll automatically line that up with the session so that it's in sync. And the really cool thing is it will also level match for you so that you can flip from reference to your mix, and it'll keep them level match so that you're not fooled by one being louder than the other.
Does it automatically level match it, or do you have to physically set the level?
No, it automatically level matches for you. And it even breaks down your frequency range and shows you what your low end is, how it's comparing both for compression and level.
So you can do EQ matching?
So you can do some EQ matching. You can just see some general stuff. It's really, really cool. I've been mixing with it all week, and it's fantastic.
Well, I'll have to check that out. I have yet to use that. I've been using Sample Magic 2,
Yep.
the new one. And that's great. Obviously, you can throw up to 9 tracks in there, and you can physically, level match, and then you can just toggle between them in real time. That one's great. But to be honest, in Studio One, what I have been doing is just dragging the tracks and sort of lining them up to, the session.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool in Studio One is that, so if I mute my reference track or the 3 reference tracks that I have in there, and I just hit solo button, it will mute everything else and just solo that track. And then if I hit solo again, it'll automatically mute that and then bring everything else back on, like in real time. So it's pretty amazing. In Pro Tools, there's a different way you can do it. I think using memory locations in Pro Tools is a good way to do it. So like for example, if I was using that in Pro Tools, I would set up I don't know, let's say you wanted to say, okay, here's verse 1 in my reference track, here's chorus 2, here's the bridge. Well, I'll create a memory location past my mix.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way I can just quickly say, okay, let me listen to my verse 1, click on my memory location, and then go to the reference track and click on that memory location that I create. So, it's not as smooth as Studio One, but again, this isn't about DAWs being better than each other. This is just about ways to use it in different formats. But
it's learning how to use what you got to
absolutely
get the good results. And the cool thing is the plugins we talked about, Magic AB and Reference, are both great tools for doing this with a plugin, but you don't need to. I used to reference without ever having a plugin for years and years by doing what you said. Actually, right. I did it the hard way. I just would go down and find it and solo it. Or I might take it and put it on 2 different outputs from my DAW. And if my master volume knob had a switch for input 1 and 2, I could just flip between them. But I like your trick using the locate positions. That's a really clever way to do it. And I know in Pro Tools, you can set up key commands to quickly go to a locate position.
Yeah, it's there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but the important thing is that whichever way works for you is that it's as instant as it can be, right? I mean, psychoacoustics, the more of a lull that we have in between changing from our mix to the reference mix or the reference mix to our mix, it becomes more difficult to be objective. So the quicker you can do it, that's why these plugins are great, these tools, because it's an instant switch. As soon as you click that button, you're into your reference track or you're back to your own mix. So that speed is very important to sort of fight psychoacoustics and to be able to objectively make mix decisions based on the references.
Yeah, and there might be times where you're actually trying to match your reference and then make a slight change to it or something like that. And in which case you really have to be able to go quickly between the two and make sure that there's no big change going on or even a subtle change.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, very cool. Well, Pete, those are some awesome, those are definitely game-changing mix moves for the home studio or for any studio for that matter. But what's cool about them is every single thing that you listed is something that Rockstars you could use definitely today on your next session in your home studio in any DAW you want, and it will be definitely a game changer for your mixes.
Right on.
All right, Pete, thank you so much for sharing all those totally killer game-changing mix moves. I know we're going to take a break here for the jam session, but before we do, you also had a really fantastic offer for the Rockstars that you wanted to tell them about.
Yeah, so Rockstars, if hopefully you're all listening to this and enjoying it. So what I wanted to do for you guys is I wanted to offer a free month over at learningtomix.com. All you have to do to get your free month is head over to learningtomix.com, go and sign up for the monthly membership. And then in the checkout there'll be a little coupon box and you could put in RSR free month. So like Recording Studio Rockstars, RSR free month. And you'll get a free 30-day trial. You can go check out the mixing community, take a look at everything. You can download the multi-tracks and the tutorials. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that. And we would love for you to stick around. But yeah, so a free month on Lidge and I.
That's awesome, man. Thank you, dude. Thanks for setting that up.
Absolutely. No problem.
Yeah, Rockstars, go check that out. Put your mixing chops into the classroom, I guess. I was going to say to the test, but maybe you're not ready to test them. Yeah, just go have fun. Go mix some tracks. Enjoy it. and see if that's a place for you to stick around. It'd be great. Well, so last reminder, we're going to take a break now for the jam session. Before we go, you'll find links to everything we're talking about here in the show notes. If you're on your iPhone or on your Android device or whatever mobile listening device of the future, just click through right in the show notes. You don't even have to type anything. You should see a link there. Probably find a link right over to learningtomix.com too, and the coupon code. And we'll see you guys in a moment for the jam session. Roswell Pro Audio brings you microphone design that is out of this world. Endorsed by a growing list of artists and producers like Phil Collen of Def Leppard, Ross Hogarth, who's recorded Van Halen, Ziggy Marley, and the Doobie Brothers, and Super Dupes, working with Drake, Mary J. Blige, and Eminem. These are all rock stars that have discovered just how great Roswell microphones sound. Check out the Mini K47, which uses a capsule modeled on the one in the vintage U47 at a street price of only $299. Or the beautiful Delphos condenser microphone with a capsule tuned like the vintage U67 with great clarity and far lower noise at a street price of only $899. In fact, you are hearing my voice right now on the beautiful Delphos microphone. These mics are carefully crafted by hand and immediately feel good even before you plug them in and hear how great they sound. These are well-built microphones that will last you and your studio a lifetime of great recording. Check out more audio examples of these awesome mics at roswellproaudio.com. Are you thinking about hiring professional mastering for your song or record? Chris Graham is a Billboard chart-breaking mastering engineer who has mastered thousands of songs for both pro and home studio clients just like you. Send in your song and Chris will give you a free sample master of your mix. Book a project with Chris today and also get a free video mix consultation before mastering. This will help make sure your mixes are the best that they can be. So go to chrisgrahammastering.com today and get your free sample started and your record finally finished. Just click the link included in the show notes. All right, Rockstars, we're jumping back in for the jam session. My guest today is Pete Woj from Mix Better Now and learningtomix.com. Pete, are you ready to jam?
We be jamming. I'm always ready to jam.
We be jamming. I love it. All right, so when you guys started out in recording, what was holding you back?
Everything. Pretty much what I see a lot of with my students and my viewers now is that just thinking that I wouldn't be good enough, that my stuff isn't going to sound, not radio ready, but even like decent. It's such an overwhelming thing to learn audio recording, mixing at first.
Yeah.
It is it's so bad. As a matter of fact, one of my ex-girlfriends, a girl I was dating at the time, on my computer screen, she put a little sticky at the bottom that says, "This is supposed to be fun for me." And I'll never forget that because she saw how frustrated I was getting like every day. I was putting in a lot of hours and a lot of work. And, like I said, back then there wasn't, magic YouTube channel you can go watch or, this and that. So yeah, just not thinking that I could really ever do, record or mix well. I mean, just in general,
Well, I love the fact that you got past that and you're able to teach everybody what you learned. Mm-hmm. All right. So now, how about sharing some of the best advice you received?
Oh man. Well, I've received some really awesome advice. I've been blessed to have some great mentors and some great.
Did you ever talk to Yoda in person?
Man, that would be awesome. I'd love to have a beer with Yoda.
Pete.
No, man.
Mix again, Pete.
But I don't know if Yoda's into beer. He might be into he's green, so
he's definitely got some bubbly concoctions in his little cave there.
Yeah, that's for sure. So some of the best advice about recording that I've ever received was I gotta give a little nod of the old cap. Tip of the cap, nod of the head. Is that?
That's all good.
I got it totally backwards, but I would have to say is how our buddy Joe Gilder has that little saying, "Get it right at the source," and that's so imperative for recording, specifically because we're talking about recording. But listen, take the time to get the sounds right when you're in that phase, in that process of the of the music making. You know, don't say I'll fix this in the mix. Don't say I'll use Melodyne. Don't say I'll, you know, whatever. You know, be able to perform and play your parts and to really capture the sound. And to make it sound as close to the final, you know, product as you want, to the final sound. That's huge.
Yeah. Well, I know that when I get better recordings, it's a lot easier to mix them.
Oh, man.
I get better mixes.
It's mixing, not fixing, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fix it before the mix.
Yeah. Dude, do you ever have guys come into the studio and this kind of miffs me because I'm a little old school. Like, I feel like you should be able to play, you know, if you're going to come in and record, but like, you ever have somebody that only wants to play 4 bars of a verse and then just copy and paste it, or like play 4 bars of a chorus? And I'm just like, dude, if you can't play your owns, come on, you know, we're better than that, right?
What are we doing here?
You know, yeah.
All right. So now how about sharing a tip, hack, or secret sauce, something that Rockstars could use on their next session?
Now, are you talking about recording session, or are you talking about...
Sorry, I forgot to say recording. I just said tip.
You did. It's okay.
A recording tip.
A recording tip, hack, or secret sauce. Something I would say would be to give yourself plenty of space between yourself and the microphone. I've seen so many, you know, people, whether they're recording vocals or acoustic guitars or whatever, they get way too close to the mic. I would say back up off the mic. You know, I'm not talking 4 feet, but, you know, give yourself a foot. It's just, you know, proximity effect is real. And a lot of that boominess is very hard to EQ out during the mixing process.
Getting too close to the mic, dude.
Oh, I have no... I can't even do it. I think my limiter and my compressor's working too hard for me to get some proximity.
There you go. There, now you got it.
But yeah, I mean, look, give yourself space. And the other thing I would say is record at conservative levels. Do not say, I'm going to record as hot as I can until it, you know, right before it starts to peak and clip and turn red. Because, I mean, right? I mean, there's really no noise floor in the digital domain. So,
right. And it will peak and it will clip and it will go red because you're going to get louder some in there.
Oh, yeah. So, yep. We'll record conservatively and don't eat the mic.
All right, cool, man. So let's move on to the next one. How about like a hardware tool that you're excited about, something that you're always glad you got it on a session?
Yeah. Wow. That's so tough. There's so much great gear, man. And this is fun too, because I haven't like pre-prepared any of these answers. I'm just
yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be the number one best one. It could just be something you've been digging lately.
Yeah. Well, I'm a really big fan of that new microphone from our buddy Matt over at Roswell Pro Audio. The
Delphos. The
Delphos is phenomenal. Like, I mean, guys, if y'all don't know Roswell Pro Audio, our friend Matt McGlynn is a genius, and he makes some amazing microphones at very, very, very affordable prices. He's got a new mic out called the Delphos, and it's a transformerless large diaphragm condenser. What I like about it is a couple things. Number one is every studio should have an awesome sounding large diaphragm condenser that can sort of sound good on everything. You know, I mean, how many times do you get that question, right? What's the best mic I can get for like under $1,000?
Right.
You know, and it's like, I mean, and thank God there's a lot of them out there today. I mean, I could rattle off 10 mics that are awesome, you know, around the $1,000 price point. And that's another little tip is I'd rather have 10 different $1,000 microphones than one $10,000 microphone for my studio. I feel like you get a lot more mileage that way. But anyway, what's great about having a large diaphragm condenser mic that sounds great on, you know, a multitude of things like vocals, acoustic instruments, electric guitar cabs, overheads, room mics, bass cabs, is that, you know, it's great to just have a go-to that, you know, sounds good. And what I like about the Delphos is how there's really not a whole lot of hyped frequencies up top. You know, like there's no bump at 10K.
Yeah, it's a smooth mic.
Oh man, it's, you know, and I'd rather kind of have that and then say, okay, I'm going to throw like a Neve 1073 on there mixing and throw a little 12K shelf on there to brighten it up. I would rather have that happen than, you know, just have something be completely sizzly and, you know, crispy on top. So, I mean, and I think the price of the Delphos is like, it's like well under $1,000.
Yeah. I actually have mine set up right now on a guitar cabinet. We were doing guitars all day the other day. And so I'm using that, mixing it through the console with a 57 to get like blended mics on the guitar cabinet. It sounds killer.
Dude, and how cool is his mic stand where he basically cut away like a third of the shock mount.
Oh, right. So you can get it up close.
Yeah. So you can butt it like right. You can just push it right against the, your guitar cab or your combo. And it's genius. It's amazing.
Nice.
And just one little other blurb about that is, I mean, I love good mic pre's, but if you guys are listening and you're new and you're starting out and you're trying to figure out like, oh man, should I get a good mic or should I get like a high-end boutique-y kind of mic pre? I would say use the mic pre in your interface, get a better microphone. I feel like that gives you a lot more mileage. The microphones to me have a lot, there's quite a bit more swing in the tonality of them and how they sound. I'd rather have 10 different microphones and one pre as opposed to 10 different pre's and one mic.
Nice, man. I like that. Well, plus you can record 9 more musicians that way.
Absolutely. You can never have enough good microphones, man.
All right. So let's go on to software. What's a software tool that you're excited about right now?
Oh, man. Well, I just did a giveaway for Auto Align.
Right. Tell us more about SoundRadX Auto Align.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not new. By any means. It's been around for a while. But basically, Auto Align is a plugin that will correct phase issues on things like drums. You could even use it on other instruments like if let's say in a session you get a bass DI track and it's just a DI. But something I will often do is duplicate that track. And then on the second track, I will put like a bass amp sim or some distortion plugins on there and make it sound like a bass amp. And then I'll blend the two. But the problem is that by adding some plugins on there, you can get some phasing issues where, it'll be kind of forward or behind from a little bit of latency. So I can use Auto Align on the drums or on something like that. But on drums, the premise is you can correct all your drum phase issues by using Auto Align. You guys can go check out. I've done quite a few, couple tutorials on it. You head over to my YouTube channel. There is my how to use Auto Align, and there's also video 1 of mixing drums from scratch. I kind of go into it, but that'll show you all the nitty gritty. And there's definitely ways to like use it properly and then not use it properly, which I've seen a lot. And it can actually make your drums sound smaller if you misuse it. So there's definitely a way to do that correctly.
Interesting.
But
does it also check polarity for you between different tracks?
Absolutely. So essentially you can change the delay and the polarity. So whenever I check the phase on, I always put it on an overhead track to start with. Mm-hmm. And a common mistake I'll see people doing is put it on like their snare drum, like their snare top mic or like their kick in mic. And you want to line it up to the overheads because the overheads give you the best spatial image of the drum kit. You can hear everything in the overhead. So I'll typically say like overhead left. I'll use that as my main point of reference. And then I'll line up my kick in mic to it, mm-hmm. my snare top mic to it, like all the toms. But here's where it gets a little different. I do not line up my room mics to it because then you're negating the space, the spatial image of your room mics. So that's a common mistake I see people do. But then I will auto align my kick out mic to the kick in mic to get one big kick sound, and I'll do the same thing with the snare bottom to the snare top. That's a little trick that I do.
Nice, man.
And that's just, I mean, it's night and day on your drums. And even if you think your drums, like say you get a session and the acoustic drums sound huge and amazing, well, you throw Auto Align on there and they will sound even more amazing after you get done.
All right. I'm not using it yet, so now I got to go get it and check it out.
Oh, bro.
I'm going to have to talk to those guys.
I'll get you a copy.
All right. Giveaway coming, Rockstars. We'll work on that.
Do it.
All right. So awesome, man. Next one up. Resource for the business side. Not everybody wants to do this just for a musical hobby. Some people want to do this for a living. What advice do you have, or what resource do you want to tell people about?
Oh, man. So a resource for the business side of the recording studio.
Yeah.
Wow.
Obviously, you do recordings and production and mixes for work. You also run a blog and a YouTube channel, and you learned a lot about the business side of that. Is there any aspect of growing your business, for example, that people need to be reminded of?
Yeah, I mean, wow, that's such a loaded question. But it's also, it depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, if you're trying to get clients or, if you're trying to,
Well,
man.
Let me spin it like this. Your experience with building a YouTube channel and growing that. Have you seen studios that want to bring on clients do that successfully?
On YouTube?
Yeah.
It's so tough. And here's part of the problem out there that I see is the race to the bottom. Like people have to lower their rates nowadays, and I don't see a lot of people getting paid what they really deserve to get paid for their work. I just think there's some things that are sort of killing and ruining rates. I don't want to specifically call out any websites, but there's some websites out there where, engineers will go or mix, mastering, recording people, and they'll offer their services at extremely cut rates. And that just makes it really hard for a lot of folks to essentially get clients if they don't have any. I would say in terms of resource for the business, I would say don't underestimate the power of networking in person. Let's get away from YouTube. Let's get away from, the internet. Go to a show in your town. Go see a band play. Go talk to some bands. Go meet people. Invite people over to hang out and have a beer and check out your studio or talk about your services. Befriend a bunch of great musicians or bands that you dig. I think that's a great way to go out there and to form a relationship with people, because once they know you as a person and they understand, your not just your skill level, but your passion for music and for helping them, I think that goes a really long way, for getting clients and stuff like that. So
that's great. I like that advice.
I would say hit the pavement and, go see a show and do that.
Yeah. Get out of the computer. Love it.
Yep.
All right. So now how about an organizational online resource? Let's get back into the computer and share with the Rockstars some cool tips for how to keep all your shit together.
Oh man, I'm still trying to figure out how to keep all my shit together. Look, of course, Google is so powerful with all the stuff that it entails. Google Docs, Google Calendar. I've actually recently switched to, I'm kind of late to the Google Calendar bandwagon, but I was using iCalendar for the longest time. Yeah. But I find that to be great. There is a backup method that I would say you got to back stuff up. Multiple times, right? Just once is a copy. What do they say? Once is a copy. And, I have multiple external hard drives, but also get a good cloud service. I used to use Carbonite, carbonite.com. I know you and I were talking about another one when I was down in Nashville that I can't remember the name of, or maybe Matt Boudreau was, I think.
Yeah, I'm not going to guess right here, but I've heard some good ones mentioned. I'm not doing any online stuff other than Dropbox right now, but I use multiple drives. So I'll have, 2 in the computer, 2 archive drives, and I also use Time Machine to just kind of constantly back stuff up to another drive as well.
Yeah. There's, but offsite is important. Like if I could stress anything to people is that offsite storage is huge, because let's just say, God forbid your house burns down, or if you have your studio in an offsite location, if it burns down or if somebody robs your place and takes your hard drives, I mean, that's about as catastrophic as it could get. So being backed up on top of the backup is huge. And then being organized is just so imperative. I had a great meeting with I'll call him a mentor, but Kirk Teachout.
Oh yeah.
And he's younger than me. He's younger than you. He's like 26, and this dude is just so together. He was helping me actually out quite a bit with my time management, and I was getting overwhelmed. I just have so much going on where it's like when you download something online, like you download seven things and you just see each one creeping along and like barely moving. But it's like, if you download one thing, you'll actually see some progress getting done on it.
Right.
So, he just very simple. We went over some stuff and just as simple as like, if you've got a lot going on, write down what you need to do and write down how long you think it'll take you to do it. And once you start kind of doing that, it makes things tangible, and you could plan a day out and you could say, all right, I can get this done today, and this done today, as opposed to just kind of blindly approaching it. So Google Calendar, Google Docs, back up your stuff in whatever cloud, of your choice. Obviously Dropbox. I don't know how anybody works without Dropbox today.
Yeah.
And, it might be kind of boring stuff, but it's important.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's jump on to the next question. The last two are hypothetically here, but this one, imagine yourself starting all over, Pete. You're in a new city and you got to start over recording and making music, and you needed a simple setup to record with. You needed to find people to make music with or record, and you needed to make a choice about making ends meet so that you could keep doing this recording thing. What advice would you have? What would be the first three things that come to mind right away?
Wow. Dude, you're asking some easy questions, huh? Dropped in a strange city. Can only take a simple setup for recording. Well, that one would definitely be a good 2-channel interface. And the reason I say, simple, we can do a lot with 2 channels, right? I love minimal drum recording. I've gotten some great sounds with 1 mic, with 2 mics, with the Glyn Johns 3 mic. So with a 2-channel interface, you can absolutely slay some stuff. I love the Apogee Duet. I think that's a fantastic sounding box. Mm-hmm. And I would say get 2 really great mics, like get a stereo pair of the Delphos, or get a stereo pair of whatever your $1,000-ish LDC of choice is.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford that, I would say get like a large diaphragm condenser, and then get maybe get an SM7, or get a, something, because listen, they're very affordable, and I think SM7s are very, very versatile. Mm-hmm. Finding people to record. I would have to go back to getting out and getting active in your area, right? Head downtown, go see some shows, go hang out and be social with folks, in places where maybe musicians hang out, go to some open mic nights, talk to people, meet people, maybe there's some venues or some bars that other musicians will frequent to go watch their friends play, and just be yourself, and, sharing the enthusiasm and sharing the passion for music making is always infectious.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how can you not? Just spending that little bit of time that I did in Nashville when I was down there, I met so many awesome people, and it was like, I could easily see how, if I moved to Nashville tomorrow, but you can do it, but you got to be out there. You need to not be in the studio to do that, which is
right. You got to actually leave the studio.
Absolutely. It's, social media, yeah, but just, I never find that quite as, I don't want to say gratifying, but quite as serious as meeting people and shaking their hand, and,
well, you still can't jam with somebody in real time over the internet. I can't sing a song with you in harmony. There's no way. That's
so true, man.
All right. So then let's talk about making ends meet. So essentially it's like, do you have to be making money recording right away, or is it cool to deliver some pizzas? What do you have to say about that?
Listen, my theory on that is do whatever you have to do to put yourself in the position to do what you love. If you want to be a recording engineer or a mixing engineer and run a studio full time, do whatever you need to do to put yourself in that position to pay the bills and to go out and meet people. All those things are interchangeable. You sort of can't do one without doing the other. Like, you have to pay the bills. Maybe you can get a job where you can meet musicians. You can bartend at an awesome venue where bands play. And maybe by bartending, you could pay some bills, and then you can go and, you can meet some of these musicians and say, hey man, I just moved to town. I've got a great studio. I love your music. Great set. You ever want to come by and grab a beer and check out the place? Or,
yeah, I like that, man. That's a smart move. It's like you're combining something that's not musical for money, but you're putting yourself in a place where you're going to still be around music and have access to it.
I always say, man, if you're a lumberjack, you got to be in the forest. And it's like, you just, it's so stupidly dumb, but it's so true. It's like,
but I've never heard you say that before. I love that you always say it.
Yeah. So,
all right. So here we go, man. Great answers. And let's take this wrap up question here and take the Wayback Studio Machine.
Yeah.
Pete, you're going to go back in time, find young Pete messing around with GarageBand or whatever, and you're going to give yourself one single bit of advice. You're going to say, here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of the studio one day. What would you tell yourself?
Oh, man. Wow. I wish that.
You wish that you could?
Yeah, I'm like thinking of Bill and Ted right now. No, so, look, some things that are important to be successful, to be a rock star of the recording studio is you got to believe in yourself and you've got to be fearless. Fear is real. It's paralyzing. Everyone sort of has those, being filled with self-doubt, but I think following your heart and just charging things and doing them when you want to, like I wish every day that I had started Mix Better Now in 2011 versus 2016, but I can't change that. So, I would say, don't be impulsive in a foolish way, but if there's something that you're passionate about and there's something that you believe in, then you got to do it, because there's nothing worse than sitting around when you're older saying, man, I wonder if that could have been something, or I wonder if I could have done something, or, I wonder how that would have turned out. You have to try and you have to go for it. I always say, if you're going to be a monkey, be a gorilla. And
a gorilla in the forest.
Yeah. A gorilla in the forest, a lumberjack with but it's true. Like I've let fear and self-doubt ruin too much stuff for me, and it's like, once you embrace that fear and once you identify what that is, right. You gotta go back to Yoda, and you gotta just focus on that, man. Right.
Nice,
Name must your fear be before you can vanish it.
Name must your fear be before you can vanish it. I love it, dude.
And of course, Yoda speak, and that's really it. So you have to identify what's going to hold you back, and you have to figure out a way to cope with that, whether it's, getting out there and meeting people to try and bring clients into the studio, or whether it is getting better and putting in the hours, to becoming a better mixer, at home. Look, the 10,000 hour rule is real. And I think the sooner that you accomplish that, or the sooner that gets done, all the better. So,
well, on that note, let's remind the rock stars that if mixing is the next move for you and you're really trying to get better at mixing, go check out learningtomix.com, Pete's monthly membership site, where you get to practice mix multi-tracks every month, and you're going to be able to watch Pete and David mix. Now, you said in real time, so it's like you're really looking over your shoulder to see how you mix this stuff, which is cool.
Something we think is important is that I want you to see me work through issues that I'm having. I want you to see how I troubleshoot things.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, right before we hopped on this call, I was just finishing up some stuff for the content of September, and I was having an issue with one of the guitar tones, and I was just trying stuff and it wasn't working. It wasn't happening. But I want my students to see that, because that's part of the struggle. That's real. Mm-hmm. I want them to see how I, sort of work through these things, and how troubleshooting is so important in any facet of the studio,
Yeah. Well, and then Rockstar, as a reminder, if you want to go check that out for a first free month, Pete has set that up for you. Just go through the checkout process and use the code RSR free month at the checkout, and that'll give you a free 30-day trial so you can check it out.
Yeah, and look, it's not just mixing. Over at Mix Better Now, a lot of the new content that I want to start focusing on is, look, mixing is important and that's a big thing, but I want to start doing a lot more. There's going to be a lot more recording stuff up there, and a lot more songwriting stuff, and just basically ways to make really great sounding music, whether, you're in a home studio or you're in a project, wherever you are. It's all about making music.
Awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Recording Studio Rockstars. It's been a blast to hang out with you. Let the Rockstars know one last time how they can find you, follow you, and reach out to you.
Yep. So you can check out my websites, mixbetternow.com, learningtomix.com. On YouTube, my YouTube channel is Mix Better Now. And then let's see, on social media, on Facebook, it's just my name, Pete Woj. I am in the process of putting together a Mix Better Now page. There's a Learning to Mix Facebook page, which you can check out /Learning to Mix. On Twitter, my handle is @MixBetterNow. And on Instagram, I am @Pete_MixBetterNow.
Awesome, man. Are we going to be quizzed on all that?
Yeah. I'm like, it's exhausting. Yeah,
So
no.
Rockstars, let's take you back to the beginning, mixbetternow.com. Hold on to that thought. That'll get you everywhere too. So
Yeah.
Pete, thank you, man. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Lidge. I appreciate
It was
it,
a
man.
blast hanging with you this summer. I look forward to visiting you in New Jersey.
AES, October, it's happening.
Oh yeah, dude. All right, man. We'll see you around the studio. Thanks for being on Recording Studio Rockstars.
My pleasure. Thanks, Lidge.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help reach more people. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to recordingstudiorockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And if you want more free content, all you have to do is text RS Rockstars to 33444. Again, that's RS Rockstars to 33444, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, and podcast updates. And I'll let you know about any upcoming giveaway offers, all totally free. Thanks for listening. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music.